Hello and welcome to episode 32 of the Large Format Photography Podcast. My name is Simon Forster and I'm joined by Andrew Bartram and Guy Bellingham. Hello Andrew.
Hi Simon.
And hello Guy.
Good morning.
It's good to have you with us, Guy.
Thank you.
Right, well, first things first, I wish to say thank you to Jack Lowe for being with us in our last show 2 weeks ago. Absolutely great having you with us, Jack. And as we talked at the time, our discussion went off in a completely different direction to where we thought it was going to go, and we really enjoyed that discussion. And I think there's definitely room for a part two there, where we can actually talk a little bit more about your process and how you get about and do things. So hopefully we'll make that happen in the not too distant future. So thank you again, Jack. Right, so on to this week, and let's head over to the Cambridgeshire Fens and see what Andrew's been up to.
Hi Simon. Well, it's the weather hasn't quite got to where I want it to be for our weekend away in the caravan, so I've got that to look forward to. So I was wondering whether to take a large format camera with me.
When you say our weekend away...
Well, not me and you, of course.
Yeah. No. Wanted to clarify that.
Me and Julie. So it's our first caravan trip since we've come out of lockdown. But I'm thinking of taking, maybe exposing a dry plate or two. We'll see. So I'll talk about that in a minute. But there was something I was going to... Oh, I know what it was. Yeah, you were talking about Jack, weren't you? Mm-hmm. And so I've been chatting to him on the Patreon chatter. And he is actually up as well for a live outside broadcast at some point in the future. So we've got an invite to go and join him on a lifeboat shoot, which I think is just brilliant. And if you don't want to do it, I'm going to do it.
Oh,
even if it means I stay down there for a few days, wherever he is, we can join him, see him at work, take pictures, and do a recording. Isn't that fantastic?
That would be absolutely amazing. No two ways about it.
So I don't know when that's going to happen. Obviously, he was saying it's, his project really, realistically, is not going to be up and running till probably next spring. And, even then, there's going to be social distancing involved, I guess. But I think he's going to have to get up and running no matter what the situation is. So, I don't know where he got to, because I think on the last, when he was talking to us, he was sort of on the south coast, wasn't he, getting ready to move to one of the Channel Islands. I don't expect I'll join him on the Channel Islands, but certainly if he starts going around towards towards Kent or East Sussex,
I'd look on his on his site, and I think he's got quite a few to do, like in North Wales and Lancashire. So
that would be good as well.
Yeah, so that could be a potential there as well.
Yeah, because I think if it depends which way he's going, because he's done. Yeah, I'm not quite... Is he working his way around in a certain direction, or I don't know. But anyway, if he's got Lancashire to do and North Wales, either of those would be good. Get the caravan over there. Yeah, so other than that, large format-wise, I did use my Industar 37 with some paper in it. It was a bit of a bright day, and I got some... what appeared to be lovely pictures of Julie, but they were, even with my quickest flip of the hand, I wasn't able, because I was, there's no, yes there is. I was doing this wide open. I could have shut it down actually, but I wanted to see what the lens looked like wide open, because that's what you do, isn't it? You want to see what it looks like wide open. And so I was exposing paper at ISO 2, and it was a bit bright really, and I needed to, it was less than a second with the bowler hat. And, I tried to be less than a second, but they were a bit dense in negatives, I think. And I was doing some contact prints in the darkroom because I couldn't print. They were so dense, I couldn't actually print through them in the enlarger. But I was doing contact prints, and then I ran out of time, and I was because even contact prints were taking a bit too long, really. So I'm going to work on that again. But actually, then I have actually taken receipt of a 4x5 holder made by former guest on the show, Jeff Perry of 20th Century Cameras. He sent me the 4.5 holder, universal holder And the interesting thing about that is it comes, well, it doesn't come with, but mine did. It came with wet plate collodion insert, dry plate insert, sheet film insert, and Instax wide insert. So you basically flip out the little insert, put the new one in, depending on what your process is, and then it folds flat with a magnet. It's very ingenious, very well designed. But more importantly, it meant I could expose my first 4.5 dry plate from Jason Lane. So I did just that. I took my large format camera to King's Lynn last weekend, and we went to see Julie's mum, which is the first time we'd seen her since lockdown. And I chose a shady end of our garden in front of a summer house, sat the mum down, stood Julie kind of next to her in the same plane of focus, and exposed my first dry plate. Now, this was using that Blethio, that French lens I bought, Simon. I can't, if you remember, that it was it's a 215mm f6.4 Blethio or something like that. And again, I wanted to shoot it wide open because I wanted to see what it looked like. So I had the ISO 2 plates in, and because I figured it was the time of the day and it was well shaded, I assumed the UV light levels would need a bit of help on the exposure, so I rated it at 1. That gave me, on my handheld meter, probably 1.5 seconds. And I only had one glass plate because I only had one holder. So I suppose I could have taken more and used a changing bag. But so I set them up, focused critically on mother-in-law's eyes, and very, very quickly stuck the plate in, made a shot, and I got an image. It's a little bit on the thin side, I think. I haven't printed it yet, but there's detail. There's detail there. The two subjects look nicely exposed, and the eyes look to be sharp, so they clearly didn't move. So I shared what I was doing on the Facebook group, and people said, well, you know, if you'd have stopped down, you could have got... people can stay still for 10 seconds. I'll be interested to see what Guy says about this in a minute, although I think he's using studios. Apparently, Jimmy Hickford said he posed and managed to sit still for 10 seconds during a wet plate collodion picture of him. And I said, yeah, I know I could have stopped down, but I wanted to see what it looked like wide open, and it was what it is what it is. So, but it was very exciting. I think until I get my Kickstarter 4x5 holder, at least I've got the 20th century one, and when I eventually do some wet plate, it means I can use wet plate in it as well. It can all be washed easily under the tap, and it's great. The only trouble is you have to get them from America, and if you're not careful, you get stung by import charges.
Yeah, I've found. Well, I've been shooting with an Indostar for quite a while, and when I use it wide open, I've actually built myself a posing stand, to hold the back of the head still. And that I found that really helps to nail focus. And I've it's quite a sort of Heath Robinson job. It's made out of all parts from a drum kit, so it's an upright stand, and I've got it's mounted on the base from an old drum stool, and I've got an upright from that, and then a cymbal arm that comes out, so you can angle it and pose it at any angle. And then I've got one of those hooks that you use to hold tools in your tool shed, like a handle hook with a couple of felt pads on that, mounted on that. And it works brilliantly. It pretty much just means I can nail focus every time.
You're shooting, I think, from looking at your work, Guy, in studios or in an inside setting for mostly, are you, with
it's
lighting?
My living room, actually, yeah. Yeah, so I live in the roof of a building, so I've got nice big Velux windows. And for the most part, I've been shooting with studio lights, hot lights, Fresnels, but I'm starting to do more stuff with the natural lights here in the morning. So I've got about a window between 9 and half 11 when the sun's on this side of the building to actually get really good natural light. Yeah.
And you're using wet plate, which gives you a really low. Is it a very low ISO, effectively? So is it less than 1?
Yeah. So generally speaking, I think it depends on the speed and age of your collodion, but it's around 0.5 to 1 ISO.
Okay, well, you can tell us more about that in a bit, because I know I've been following some of your conversations on Facebook where you've been chatting with Mark Osterman of George Eastman House, and we'll certainly chat about that in a while. But I'll give Simon a chance to tell us what he's been up to. What you've been up to, Simon?
Well, I've just got a quick question about this posing stand.
Oh, yeah.
And about what part actually touches the model? Is it around the neck? Is it behind the head? How does that work?
They used to use them in Victorian times. So generally speaking, you've got two kind of pads that sit probably about 2 inches apart, that sit usually just above the nape of the neck. Or you can position it anywhere, but it's just a reference point for the person sitting. They don't have to be leaning into it. They can just be touching it.
Yeah.
And it helps hold the head still to some degree. But particularly when you're focusing with such a narrow depth of field, it's a huge help to actually nail that focus on the eyes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you can buy an antique one, but they cost an absolute fortune. So I've kind of cobbled one up together.
Share a few photographs perhaps into the Facebook group. That would be great, Guy.
Oh, sure, yeah, I'll post one up. Yeah. But yeah, it needs to be heavy because you don't want it flexing or moving in any way. So usually I weight it down with a sandbag, and that works. Seems to work really well.
No, I'm really intrigued by that because I could see that helping me when we get back to the Six Towns Darkroom Club, which also has a studio. I want to take some shots with my speed graphic. Although that said, though, doing it, I can use slower film. But just with the case of the speed graphic, or rather my MPP micropress, which has actually succeeded my speed graphic, I should say. And also I want to take some shots using an Aero Ectar or a enlarged lens, or not enlarged lens, a projection lens wide open. And of course, the issue that you have with that setup is yes, you can get the focus, but then you've then got to you've got to insert your film holder and all those kind of things, and that takes a period of time. And when you've got that tiny depth of field, even though you can take the actual photograph quickly, you've still got to have the model has to be still whilst I'm changing all the equipment and getting the shot ready. So it's same problem in a different way, if you like. So I could definitely see the usefulness of something. And as I say, even when you say about antique ones, at the end of the day, these things have always been cobbled together. It's never been a mass-produced item, has it? So it's one of those things where it doesn't matter what it looks like as long as it doesn't get in the photograph and it's sturdy and it does the job. Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty simple to knock one up. I know people who use a variety of things, but yeah, it really is a huge help. I mean, particularly. It's a lot, it's good to have people sitting down. That does make things easier. Even if you just got simply a back to a chair that people can lean into, but actually, marking where the back of the head should be with the stand makes a huge difference. Particularly when if you're shooting with an Aero Ectar or something where that depth of field is so narrow. It's brilliant, and it's cheap too. It's an easy thing to knock together.
Yeah.
If folks find themselves in Liverpool, as I often do, go and check out the Hardman House in Liverpool. It's the home of a working photographer, or he was in the last century. I think up until about 1930s or 40s maybe. And he worked with his wife in a fairly wealthy part of Liverpool at the time. It's where all the doctors and surgeons lived. So he did a lot of society portraits, but basically you go around, you have to make an appointment and they take small groups around. And it's pretty much left as, as a working photographer's house. It was in some disarray, I think, when the guy died. In fact, he might have lived on into the 60s, but he'd stopped sort of working, and the house was in a bit of a state when it was kind of taken over eventually by the National Trust. But they put it back into a working photographer's house, and he's got large wet plate cameras stood on, a bit like going to Dave Shrimpton's house. That's what it looks like. And various stands for holding necks steady and stuff. So certainly recommend that. If you find yourself in Liverpool, check out the Hardman House. That's just a slight aside.
No, that's something I'd like to try. I'd like to check that out, definitely. Liverpool's not a million miles away. It's where I like to go to.
Yeah, I don't know what the situation is now because the little groups were quite intimate. So I know National Trust properties are starting to open up, but it's probably going to be on a phased basis. And somewhere like that, they might be one of the last to get back to normal. I don't know.
Have you just talking about keeping subjects still? Have you guys ever come across the hidden mother shots from the Victorian period?
I may have done. Keep talking and jog my memory.
So this is where people wanted pictures of their babies and toddlers taken, and so they just wanted the picture of the baby or toddler themselves. And rather bizarrely, I mean, this does seem very Victorian, but the mother would sit in a chair and then be covered in like a black drape or some sort of fabric, so almost ghost-like, if you like. And then they'd hold the baby or toddler absolutely still for the exposure to be taken, so that they didn't move. So there's, if you can Google it, but there's it's a bizarre, they're bizarre looking pictures where the mothers are hidden, but the babies are, held frozen.
Well, so you've got me thinking now. The other bizarre sort of, I guess it's Victorian practice, and it seems bizarre to our eyes, but there was a whole. I say industry, it's perhaps not the right word, but there was a whole phenomenon of photographing the dead, but not just photographing the dead, but, dressing them up and posing them and, things that look a bit kind of morbid and perhaps to our way of thinking, but presenting them in an almost lifelike fashion. And I think that would have been, obviously there's not much issue with them moving, is there? But but it just got me thinking,
I was thinking I was thinking on exactly the same lines as soon as I saw these photographs. There was I don't know if it was a documentary about it. But I saw something about a couple of years ago. I think
there might have been a drama. It might have been a docudrama or something.
Right.
Yeah.
But I've just brought up the pictures of the hidden mother photos, and they are bizarre. They're so ridiculously bizarre. If the way it was described, the way you were describing it, Guy, I was thinking, well, perhaps they were just like very carefully disguising the mother in the photograph so that you don't actually know that the mother's actually there, and it's just
like a woman with a cloth on her head.
Well, exactly. This is ridiculous. It's absolutely nuts.
Oh, there's one there. It was like a woman covered in like a tablecloth.
Yeah.
With a tablecloth hand around the front of this baby who's looking a bit scared.
Yeah, they're very strange.
They are weird, aren't they? And there's one that looks like a black, black ghost behind her, but actually the arm is coming out, and so you've got this disembodied adult arm around this child with this black spectre-like figure between the two girls. How weird is that? Well, thank you, Guy.
Would you know what the logic was behind this?
I don't know why they wouldn't be seen together. It just seems
there's a modern take on it as well. There's one here by someone called Jennifer Combe, Combe, of jennifercombe.com. So, and this is a modern picture. It's just on Google there on when they bring up the images, and so there's clearly somebody still practicing it.
Wow.
So she's got a sort of paisley patterned sheet over her, and both her hands are visible. And it's the most bizarre thing.
There are more as well. There seem to be more people that are doing this. Yeah.
So it's obviously a thing, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, they're just recreating it for whatever reason.
There's another one here with some lady with tattoos up her arm, so her arms are visible, and she's...
Yeah, that's the one I saw.
Is that your one you're looking at?
Yeah, it was earlier, yeah.
Yeah, so Google, as Guy said, Google hidden mothers photos. Wow.
Well, I'm now looking at one. I'm going to have to try and dig the links out for these so people can see them, because they're extraordinary. There's one where it's clearly a Victorian lady holding a child, and you think, well, okay, that's fair enough. But what you can't see is the mother's, from the waist downwards, she's wearing something dark. And then she's wearing a white blouse, and you can see her arm supporting the child. And then, as you look up the blouse, you get to the neck of the blouse, and then the face disappears. It's completely headless.
There's another one here with two young babies sitting on a chair, and the woman's not making she's not covering them. She's just hiding behind the chair. You can just see the top of her head and her arms around the side. And there's also something called the Hidden Mother Brewery as well, which I've just discovered. How about that?
Well, there you go. This is that thing.
There's a whole rabbit hole you've opened here, guys.
Yeah, we make this podcast. We never know where any episode is going to go. We think we do, and it never gets there. And now we're talking about headless women and invisible women and so on. So, fascinating stuff. And we will include links in the podcast notes, which will be on our website, and also, of course, they'll be in the Facebook group. But if you can't get to the Facebook group, or you don't want to go there, then head to our on Podbean. Yeah, so if you look up Large Format Photography Podcast on Podbean, you'll see where our show notes are all there as well, and you'll be able to see links to some of these amazing photographs. Right, so
I think I'd asked you what you're up to, and then you went back and quizzed about neck rests, and then we got on to hidden mothers.
Yeah, okay. All right, well, it's like, how'd you follow that, really? I've not been up to a huge amount of photography in the last 2 weeks. A couple of reasons. One reason, which I'm not going to go into now, and that's I had a short hospital stay and a something of a scare. And if you want to hear more about that, I talk about it at length on the Classic Lenses podcast, which went out a couple of days ago. So that wasn't good, and that sort of put me off doing things for a bit. But immediately before that, and quite possibly the cause of what put me in hospital, was I'd just been printing quite a number of things for clients, and I just happened to have this situation where, I would say printing, that's 3D printing photographic related products. And I'd had an order come in from Japan, and I was also finishing something off, which was large format related, for Steve Lloyd of Chroma Camera.
5x7 hot swappable back.
Exactly.
How exciting is that? That looks really good.
That's it.
So you can, for the first time, you can turn a 4x5 camera into a 5x7 camera. I can't get my head around it. It's awesome.
Wow. It's a great idea.
So that would be so presumably, Simon. Sorry, but because I was thinking about this after I've been dwelling on it all week, really, because I thought, well, can I justify buying one of those? And I think, well, actually, I do a lot of 5x7, 6x17 panoramic photography on the back of my 4.5. So presumably, to accommodate the 5x7 hot swappable back, either you've got to have bellows that sort of come bigger, do they, or go further back to allow the light to open up to that 5x7 aspect ratio? So I'm thinking, what happens when I put my 6x17? Do I get even more? Can I use wider lenses? I can't quite get my head around it, but
yeah.
There's something about that Chroma camera, the Carbon Adventurer, which allows that, instead of a normal 4x5 back, to put a 5x7 back on and still get full image coverage.
Yeah,
I mean,
and that's to be honest, I've not actually seen this in the flesh. I've only seen the pictures like as you have. And the bits I built 4 parts for it because they're quite large, and I'm able to print quite large things. So
it looked very professional what you did, I have to say. I don't know. Don't mean to sound surprised, but it looked really good.
It was worth the effort.
Did it take long? Sorry, I keep interrupting you, but I'm full of questions. Did it take long?
Yeah, the largest piece took about 14 hours to print one item. And then there were several other items. That was the longest, the longest print, if you like. But just worth letting people know that this is something that is it's been designed in with the Carbon Adventurer camera, and it doesn't work with the advanced 4x5, which is what started off as the Kickstarter one that's been that keeps changing, and more about
the Carbon Adventurer. That's a sort of separate model, but is that more flexible in what it does in terms of movements and things? Or is it just designed differently to be sort of modular and have things built up into it?
It's largely a different design, and I'm slightly wary that really we should get Steve back on.
Yeah, we should talk about it.
We only had him for about half an hour.
We can ask him some. We can ask him some difficult questions as well if he comes on.
Exactly. But no, the design philosophy behind the Adventure is different to the Advanced, and it allows, it's got more movement in it. The fact that he's using a lot of carbon fibre in it gives him more options. It actually reduces some options as well, because you lose physical flexibility goes, but that the greater rigidity also gives more opportunities, and that's where this came in. Because I think if you did this with the Advanced, I guess it wouldn't be rigid enough to do it on the extension. I don't know, but.
Well, let's get him back on fairly soon, because he's doing great things, and I mean, out of between him and Intrepid, they're just keeping this whole, not just keeping it alive, but they're just opening this up to so many photographers who wouldn't have otherwise considered large format photography.
Yeah, and just on the subject of chroma, it's also worth noting that back in, I don't know, the start of this year, when things were normal, if you remember those days, I actually started to team up with Steve to help him build chroma cameras to help him get through the backlog, and then COVID happened, and it was a case of I was going to be helping him trying to get through his backlog of orders, and there were a couple of things there. I built a number of cameras, and if anybody's wondering if they've got one of the cameras I built, and they're a bit scared about that, you can tell because I've scratched S and L.
Do you know, I was wondering if you did that. You're like one of those old stonemasons, aren't you? Who used to put their little monographs, or often on one of the gargoyles, they'd put their own face in as well. There's not like a little Simon Forster face somewhere.
There's a little bit of me in every one of them. But
I'm horrified.
But fear not, Chroma customers. If you were inflicted with one of my cameras, they were fully checked over by Steve before they went.
But they'll become collector's items. It's like having a stamp which is kind of watermarked back to front or something, isn't it? Or something odd about it, and you've got or one of those lenses, like where it's been endorsed by Linhof or something, so you've got one that's actually got Simon Forster written on it instead of Linhof.
Yeah. Except I didn't. I decided to keep them anonymous. Didn't want anything coming back to me. But no. So there were a few issues, and that would have carried on. But there was. And I got to the point where I was competent at building these things, except that every week Steve changed the design on something. So you learn how to do something, how it goes together, and then the next thing, I've changed that, Simon. Now this will be the last time you need to learn to do that, because you don't have to do it again, because we're going to do it this way. And that's what's been happening all the time as anybody's been following the Chroma story. It's a story of continuous improvements, and that's what's been going on there. So that made it quite difficult to learn how to build things. Then the next thing was COVID and getting hold of materials, which completely dried up for a period of time, and now they've actually started to come through again, and I've spent a little bit of time with Steve doing things in a different way. Instead of actually building whole cameras with him, I've been helping him assemble components so that he can then do the final assembly much more quickly. So which is the better way of doing it all round, really. So that's pretty much what I've been up to. So should we head over to Guy and find out what you've been up to, Guy?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I'm mainly been working on Figalotypes at the moment, which is digital tintypes. So
So is that the technical name for a digital tintype then?
Yeah, so they were the first person to do it was a guy called Gerald Figal, and I don't know whether you know it, but there's a Facebook group called Collodion Bastards.
Have you got to beat that out?
No, it's fact. It can stay.
Yeah, so it's kind of like a splitter site from the other collodion purists who only use magnesium flash and dedicated to the sort of traditional method. So it's more for a group where people are more willing to experiment around with the wet plate process. So Gerald runs that, and yeah, he was the first person to pioneer it, and that's what they're called. So it's where you basically set up a wet plate camera in front of your computer monitor and take a wet plate photograph of the computer screen, whatever image is on it. So yeah, seeing as due to COVID, I can't do any portrait sittings in my studio at the moment. What I'm doing is wet plating the catalogue of large format digital pictures that I've taken so far. So I'm kind of immortalizing my subjects in silver. Yeah. So I've got a little, got a tiny little hallway cupboard, and I've set up a little wet plate station in there with a red light, and yeah, so that's what I'm working on at the moment.
I've just gone on to I've just attempted to join that group because I couldn't help but search Collodion Bastards, and it's called Collodion. For the full name of the group is Collodion Bastards, wet plate work of questionable parentage.
I have to say, there's some great artists on there. It's well worth checking out. Yeah, I've learned a lot from there.
Wow. Okay. Well, that seems eminently sensible, because knowing what I do of this antiquated process and the fact that you have to expose plates, while they're wet, hence, that's why they're called wet plate opposed to dry plates. It kind of limits you, to doing things close to home or in a certain way, or if you're like our last guest, you've got a mobile darkroom, and that's okay. But during this period where you can't go too far, apart from constantly just shooting things in your garden, but here you've got an opportunity, you've got an endless subject matter, both of your own photographs. I suppose you could go and photograph some landscapes that you've taken as well if you wanted to, but certainly as a good way of getting some of those digital portraits onto a wet plate medium. Yeah. Does it really offend the purists then? Do they send you hate mail or something, or is there like a war going on?
Well, I think some people are, in any field, there are some people who are sticklers for tradition. But yeah, I really like alternative processes and hybrid processes, and that's how I like to work. But
I saw the term Figalotype on a recent post you'd said where you'd shot with the awesomely named 15-inch Cook Knuckler, which sounds like some kind of violent apparatus for thumping somebody in a boxing ring. And then you've used several phrases which are I just need to unpick at some point.
Sure.
Figalotype, I thought must have been a typo. The Cook Knuckler just inspired me. And then the old dead bride collodion.
Yes.
That took me down the rabbit hole of clicking on Mark Osterman's website, and I realised, or his link, and I realised that he works at George Eastman House, and looks another interesting. So I liked his page.
Yeah.
And then you were referencing some book, and so I thought, wow, we could have a whole podcast just talking about Figalotypes, Cook Knucklers, and dead old bride collodion.
Yeah. So, which would you like to start with?
Yeah. Well, you've kind of whetted our. Now I know Figalotype is a real thing.
Yeah.
So Cook Optics, they're still going, aren't they, Simon?
They are,
yeah. I'm sure I follow somebody on Twitter from Cook, and they do a lot. Do they do a lot of lenses into the cinema and cinematography industry and stuff like that these days? I guess. Yeah,
they have. They have a particularly beautiful way of rendering. They're used on a lot of films, but very slightly soft. Very. Good for skin tones. And the Knuckler lens that I have here, it's from the 1930s. And yeah, it's a 15-inch. and it's a huge thing of brass and glass. It weighs 4.5 kilos. Yeah.
I think does that take that we were measuring lenses and a few shows back, Simon, weren't we? I don't know if you listened. That was a Dave Shrimpton show,
Dave,
wasn't it?
yeah.
So you would have listened to that.
Yeah.
Did you rush out and weigh your Cook Knuckler when we got onto that bit?
Well, I know how much it was because of the shipping cost when I bought it. But yeah, it's an amazing lens. It has there's these two sort of rings on the side that look a little bit like a knuckle duster, and that's the reason it's got its nickname, Knuckler. And basically, that it's got 3 elements, and the handles you can rotate about a quarter of the way around, and that moves the central element inside the lens, and that causes more spherical aberration. So what that does is it means it gradually increases the soft focus, which is particularly good for wet plate, because because it can be wet plate can be quite harsh. But yeah, it's a really handy thing to have on a lens.
So you can almost turn it into one of those old-fashioned sort of soft focus portrait lenses. That
exactly, it's super sharp when the soft focus is on 0, but you can set it all the way up to 5, and it's almost like an old Verito or something like that.
Or something that Lomography are kickstarting. They're doing things like this now, aren't they? With you can turn a little dial and whistle up a bit of soft focus.
Yeah.
Or maybe a bit of bokeh. Whatever, one of those.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a bokeh ring I'm thinking of, not soft focus ring, but it's the same principle. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I've only been working with that a little bit. I literally built the camera that it fits on just before lockdown. So I've only.
Is that the 12 by 12 camera you were talking about?
This is a new 16 by 16 one.
Right. And I wanted to talk to you about building what they look like as well. But anyway, so 16 by 16 and a 12 by 12.
Yeah. Yeah. So I built the 12 by 12 about 18 months ago, something like that. And that's actually fitted with an Indostar. And so the majority of my work that you'll see on my Instagram is shot with that. But it's actually they're both digital cameras. So they're a pretty unique design. So they're actually both camera obscuras. So what this means is that where your film holder would be or the ground glass would be, it's actually just a white plain sheet inside. So kind of describe how these things look. So the front half is a 4x5 monorail camera, but with the back of the camera taken off, so the bellows are open at the back end. And then I've basically built a wooden box, cuboid in shape, and bolted that onto where the bellows are. So the bellows sit in the middle of the front of the box, and on the back and the inside at the back of the box is the white sheet. So the image from the lens just projects onto the white background. And then I'm using a digital camera to photograph the projected image inside. So yeah, that's how my system works. So I'm managing to get the look of large format with its shallow depth of field, but on a digital format.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So there's so many questions now. Right. So the camera, the digital camera, that's effectively facing backwards.
Correct. Yeah. It's like a folded optical path, if you like.
Yeah. So, but in itself, that's going to be also taking the shot from an angle, isn't it? It's going to be from one side. Because it can't be from the centre, because it'll be obscuring the image circle.
Yes, correct.
Okay. So So go on. You say more.
Okay. So to be able to do that, I'm using on my digital camera, I'm using a shift lens. So this means I can counteract for the parallax issue. So what that means is that both the lens for the both the large format lens and the lens on the digital camera are pointing straight backwards. but the lens on the digital camera is shifted. So this means that I can shoot the back of the inside of the camera obscura straight on and dead center in line with the center of the large format lens.
Wow. I was just assuming when I saw a reference to your 12-12 or 16 by 16 that you'd built something that took that size, film or plates or something.
Yeah, it's a pretty unique setup, I have to say. But yeah, so yeah, that's how it works. With this system, you are losing a lot of light because obviously the image has to bounce off the projection surface and back to the digital camera.
Yeah.
So you lose about 7 stops of light. So that means my exposures, even though they're digital, are sort of, even with quite a lot of light, they're around half a second or something like that.
And what ISO are you shooting?
I'm usually shooting at around 400.
Right.
But on a bright sunny day, if I whack the ISO up, I can shoot video with these as well, which is great because you've got the effective depth of field is about f/0.6. So I can shoot video with an incredibly narrow depth of field, and also I've got because the front end is a 4x5 monorail. I've also got tilt and shift and swing as well. Yeah.
Right. So what digital camera are you using?
I'm using a mirrorless Sony.
Yeah. Full frame A7. Something?
It's a AR7 II. Which is a full frame mirrorless.
Yeah. And you mentioned using a shift lens.
Yeah.
So you're using shift and not tilt.
Correct, because you'd have trouble with focusing issues with tilt because you're losing that 7 stops of light. You have to shoot with the lens on the digital shift lens wide open. So you have to.
Yeah. I think you're using the shift lens to enable you to position the digital image in a way that you're shooting square on to the.
Exactly.
Otherwise, you're going to be tilting the camera. That's effectively what you're saying. So the camera is not really, in order to, when you're photographing, it's not quite in the right place. But by moving the shift lens, it is. Is that right?
Yeah, precisely that. Yeah.
Like if you're just using a normal large format camera and you want to move things up or down a bit.
Yeah, that's exactly how it works.
Without moving the camera from its position.
And what focal length is the shift lens?
Well, it depends. I've got a couple of setups. So I'm using wide angle to be able to cover the back of the whole back of the projection surface at such a close distance, and obviously the lens has to be fast as well. So the main one I use is a Sigma Art lens, which is 1.4 and 24 mil. Yeah, and that's using a shift adapter on the.
I was just going to say, because they don't actually make that lens as shift in itself, do they? So
no.
So is that on a Canon mount? Is it? And then
it's a Nikon mount,
okay.
And I'm using a Nikon to Sony shift adapter.
Right.
With that, and I have, I've tried various lenses on that, but the wide angle ones work better because they have a larger image circle, which means you get less vignetting from the shift.
Yeah.
See, I'm thinking of one of my projects for next year is to make an 8x10 camera, but nothing terribly complicated. And I was thinking, I was rather hoping you were doing something like this instead of this clever system that involves me buying a digital camera, which I don't want to do. So I'm just going to make a very simple box in a box focusing system with my Industar 37 on the front, and then with an 8x10 sheet film holder or eventually maybe dry plate holder, so that I can just shoot portraits. I don't want any movements. I don't want to be able to shift and tilt. But so just very simple box in box. So like a twin lens reflex focusing mechanism, really, because that's all a TLR is, isn't it? You're moving something within something else. So as long as it's sealed and I don't get lights in there, I reckon a box within a box camera with the Industar screwed into the front of the wooden lens panel, and then my 8 by 12 what is it, 8
by 10?
Yes, that's it. Goodness me, I had a moment there. 8 by 10 film holder in the back.
Cool.
That'd work, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
And then, of course, I want to build it so that I can make good use of the Industar lens.
It's a great lens, I have to say.
I like looking at it. It's just a lovely thing.
Yeah.
So I set mine up in the garden, and I can't get close enough really, but I got a decent sort of head down to knee shot, but I couldn't come in any closer really. Not with that setup, so I need to do something different.
Right. Is that because of your lack of bellows extension? Is that?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So figured with just bits of wood making a box inside a box, you can pretty much do what you like, can't you?
Yeah. I have to say, it's pretty tough building your own camera. I admire anyone who's done it. I know how much work goes into it. And I don't.
Yeah, but a box in a box doesn't sound too difficult, even for my skills. Something with bellows and making plans for racking backwards and forwards and doing a proper engineering job. That's something difficult, something different. But box in a box,
I have to say,
I can manage that.
Mine look quite Heath Robinson. They're all made out of bits of plywood and various odds and ends from my local hardware store. So they don't look like much, but I'm.
No, it doesn't matter, does it?
Yeah, they work.
If you can get an image to focus on a nice big negative, and it works and does the job. As I say, I'm not looking for center tilt and shift facilities and back tilt and goodness knows what.
Yeah,
I think it's just worth anybody that's actually listening along and they're sitting in front of a computer or on their mobile phone and they've got a good signal or whatever, that if you go to Guy's Instagram account, which is Guy Bellingham Photography, so very easy to find. And so if you're listening along, it's well worth heading over to Guy's Instagram page so you can have a bit of an idea of the results. They're quite remarkable results that we're looking at here.
Anyway, I've got a name for the show, Simon. Hidden Mothers and Knuckle Dusters. How about that?
That's great.
That's a good one. That's a winner. Yeah. Well, I think now might be a good time to actually introduce our guest. So, Andrew, would you like to do a more formal introduction to Guy?
Yeah. Well, hello, Guy, and welcome to the show.
Thank you both.
So I've reached out to Guy a couple of weeks ago. Really only become aware of Guy through starting to post into the large format photography Facebook group, and of course I'm immediately caught by these really interesting portraits Guy's doing, and a little bit of searching shows that he's into these wet plate processes. And it's some lovely original work, and you've clearly got a great enthusiasm and a great interest in old processes, and you're very enthusiastic. And I saw that you were making cameras, and I thought, yeah, you'd make a great guest. I don't think you thought you hadn't been at it long enough, and I thought, well, even if you haven't been at it long enough, you're doing some awesome work, and we'd love to have you on the show. So you're very welcome, Guy. And you've spoken a little bit about what you've been up to and what you're doing, but why don't we do that a bit more of a formal introduction now, where perhaps you can just tell us a little bit about your story, because it's an interesting story.
Yeah.
And it kind of links in with the subject matter that you're using now. So don't leave any of that interesting story out. If you go on too long, Simon will stop you. or he'll send me a message and saying you've got to stop him talking. So welcome, Guy, over to you for a short while.
So yeah, my name's Guy. And I've basically been, I sort of got started into larger formats about a couple of years ago. But I've always had a pretty healthy interest in photography, and my background is in circus and cabaret and performing, and I think my initial interest, I did a photography GCSE back in like 1996, I think, something like that, on 35mm. And as I got more into this kind of circus scene, I started doing juggling and fire juggling, and I discovered long exposure photography. So I did a lot of experimentation with that, and then as my career took off, I've kind of been doing a lot less of photography. But it was about a couple of years ago, that I really started getting back into it, and so most of my subjects, the portraits that I'm taking, are from people I know within the circus, cabaret, and variety scene. Mostly my friends and people I know on that circuit, and they're quite an interesting bunch of characters. So that's where I come from.
I was going to say, when you talk about an interesting bunch of characters, I've just scrolled all the way down through your Instagram feed, and it's just full of characters.
Yes.
I mean, I wouldn't say famously, but I've been averse to taking portrait shots and things like that. I'm always a bit nervous about working with people and actually showing them off to being at their best. And I look at your work and the people that are in them, and I think, oh, these are absolutely the kind of photographs I'd love to take. And you just go through them, and they're all excellent, and they've got an effortless look about them as well. And so, and there's clearly two things going on there, and that's your ability to direct your models, and also you can absolutely tell that these people like to be in front of a camera. They all look incredibly comfortable, and even some like the relatively simple shots. I mean, there's a colour shot in there of a pretty ordinary looking chap, and he's got a cardboard hat that's just over to one side, and he's holding a balloon, and it's a great photograph, and it's just so simple. More people need to be seeing your work. So head over to Guy's Instagram account, because there's some absolutely fantastic stuff on there.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
And are these mostly friends from the circus world, Guy? Is it?
That's right. Yes. Yeah. So most of these people I've been shooting so far are people I know, who I've met on gigs or have worked with. The guy actually with the balloon and the circus hat was my agent for a long time. So that was his 50th birthday photo.
He doesn't look very happy, does he?
We'll do a bit of deadpan for that one. But yeah, I mean, one of the things that I'm lucky with is that a lot of these people aren't shy, so they're very comfortable in front of a camera or an audience, and they're quite a lot of them are unafraid to pull extreme expressions or just be completely natural and comfortable in themselves, but sitting in front of a big 16x16 camera can be quite intimidating. But I'm also putting them under hot lights as well. So most of these people are obviously used to the stage lighting as well. And the style that I've been going for is very much influenced by the Hollywood photographers from the 30s and 40s. So I actually found book of George Hurrell's work in a charity shop, and that's really what started this.
Who's that? Sorry,
George Hurrell.
Oh, right, yep.
Yeah, so he shot.
Yeah, no, I'm familiar with that. Yeah, I didn't quite catch the name, but yeah.
Yeah, so he shot a lot of the movie stars in Hollywood in the 30s and 40s, and at that time, he was shooting with a 10x8 camera, studio camera, and he actually used the same lens that I have, which is the Knuckle that we mentioned earlier. And so they at that time they used, rather than flash, they used Fresnel lighting, which is tungsten focusable hot lights, and that's what kind of gives that era of photography that kind of slightly glamorous look, if you like. And so, sorry,
just tell us a little bit more about tungsten. What did you say? Tungsten focusing.
Yeah, they're Fresnel lights. So that's
Fresnel, like in a lens.
Yeah. So some people call it Fresnels.
Yeah,
but apparently the correct pronunciation is Fresnels. Yeah. So they've got a lens on the front, much in the same way that Lighthouse does, with the kind of concentric rings.
Oh yes,
that allow you to focus the beam.
Right.
And so I've got 3 or 4 of them here, and I mean, not many people are using them these days. Most people use softboxes and flash, but it's actually a very hard light.
Yeah.
But it gives it that really kind of stagey, spotlit kind of look, which is kind of makes the work quite distinctive. And
are you using another one of those on the background? Because a lot of these have that sort of spotlight in the background, don't they? Behind the head, almost looks like a halo. Or is it the actual light on the face throwing into the background?
No, I use a separate light to light the background for those. So usually, I'm in most of those pictures, I'm using a 3-light setup, a key light, a hair light in the background, and then occasionally I'm using a slightly softer light to add in a bit of fill as well.
Any little reflectors to, on the dark side?
Yeah, occasionally, yes. I've got a little gold reflector that comes in quite handy, and so I use those in combination with the posing stand and shooting at a super narrow depth of field. I'm shooting with both my Indostar and my Knuckle at completely wide open. So the depth of field is at close distances, it can be less than a centimetre. So you really do have to nail focus. And I've kind of got my front room set up with a chaise longue I got off eBay and an old standard lamp and a Chesterfield chair. So it's I'm trying to keep in feeling with the era.
You need to get yourself over to Dave Shrimpton's house.
I've seen his cavern. I haven't been over, but it looks fantastic.
So when you asked Les, right, to cover his face with elastic band, so he looks like some cross between the Elephant Man and Tubbs from the League of Gentlemen, what possessed him to say yes? That's
actually a signature part of his act.
Oh, is it?
So he was hilarious. He's actually he lives just over the road from me here. He's a mime and clown physical performer.
Wow.
And he's a very playful man, and he brought a suitcase full of props. And the shot that I particularly like that I did with him was him with about 4 pairs of spectacles on his face. He's a very interesting character, and he was an absolute joy to work with. He's an absolutely brilliant mime as well. So he's good at holding still.
You've got the distinct benefit of having lived in this, I see the one with all the glasses, lived amongst this community and know these people so well, and you've got a wealth of subject matter. Most of us are scratching around for people to shoot, and then there's a degree of self-confidence or lack of self-confidence that comes in when you put someone in front of a camera, and these are just clearly natural born performers, aren't they? So have you run out of subjects yet, or are you still working your way through this?
So I've got a list of about another 20 people I want to shoot, and I'm beginning to get people get in contact with me now, which is great. But I've got puppeteers, jugglers, acrobats, burlesque performers. Yeah, loads of people. But
So
I do have to say that even some of these people that it can be said to be true that some performers, although they might seem very confident, they're actually quite shy off stage. And so what I usually do at the beginning of these shoots is actually get them to pull stupid faces, and I just try and joke around, make them laugh. If you like, I say to them, we're going to take the ugly shots first.
Get them in the mood almost, because
Exactly.
they need to switch on their performing gene, don't they, I guess?
Exactly. And I think this works with people who aren't performers too. It just really helps them relax, that you know when you're going to do a shoot that not all these pictures are going to come out perfect and beautiful. There's going to be some duffs in there, so you might as well get these duff ones done out the way. So it just gets them to pull extreme faces, and it lightens the mood, helps them to relax, and it means that there is no right face or expression to pull. And during the course of a shoot, with this digital setup, I can do like between 60 and 100 in a couple of hours. So I basically get them not to be precious about how they are in front of the lens. I think it's really good advice for anyone, not just performers who are stuck in trying to hold still against a opposing stand and stuck under really hot lights as well.
So when you're trying to get people to laugh, do you put your bowler hat and your red nose on?
No, I've got a series of unusual prompts. I'd like to give people suggestions of ideas to think of, or ways to look, or what expressions they might pull if such and such happened, or and I think it's really crucial for a photographer to do that. It's not, you're not just pointing the camera at somebody. The photograph that you take is going to be a record of the relationship that you have with your subject.
I'm wondering what you said to the lady who's laying naked on your chaise lounge. I can't work out what. Oh, she's got a glass in her mouth, isn't she?
Yeah, she actually insisted on getting naked and having that done.
And have you sat on the chaise lounge since?
That's my friend Lena, and she's a fantastic burlesque performer. She teaches, and she also runs her own cabaret nights, or she would have been doing if it wasn't for lockdown.
Well, she doesn't seem to be shy. That's all I'll say.
No. So,
did you have that sort of image in mind, or did she just say, "Shall I get naked and lay on your chaise lounge"?
Well, she did say, when I first spoke to her before she came round, she did want to do some nudie shots. So why not?
Awesome.
Yeah.
Is she in a colour one? Oh, there's a colour one as well further over, isn't there? Further down.
Yeah. I think there's a few of her on there.
And that's your lounge. So you've set up your lounge in this sort of almost faux Victorian corner for shooting with your large format camera.
Yeah, so it's my friend described it the other day as like a cross between a gentleman's club and backstage at a boudoir.
Yeah, I didn't like to say that, but thoughts went through my mind. So the majority of these pictures on your Instagram site, Guy, they're all made with this 12-12 or 16-12 mod. Is a 16-12 the same modified monorail camera shooting into effectively a box with a sheet hang down, and then with a digital camera making the image? Is it the same technique for the? Yeah,
they're both the same. They both work on the same principle, but the setup is very, very slightly different between the two. It's actually very, it's a very complicated thing to work out all the optics because I'm using a 10x8 lens on a 4x5 monorail, that you get cut off from the bellows at a certain distance where it joins the box.
Yep.
If that makes sense. It's like what we were talking about earlier with putting the 5x7 back on a 4x5. So that limits me on the focal range that I can get from each of these. So the new 16x16 can now shoot from a distance of about 1 meter to about 3 or 4 meters, because I can only get a certain amount of travel on the monorail, because otherwise then I bump into the front of the box. And obviously that's got to be balanced with the coverage from the wide angle shift lens on the digital camera and how far away I mount that and also how much shift I can get from that to be able to meet the center of the.
You're not making life easy for yourself, are you?
No, and also the speed of that as well. I've tried like 5 or 6 different lenses to try and get a fast, fast shift lens that doesn't distort too much at that close distance as well, or get too much vignetting with using the shift. So I'm literally balancing like 5 factors at once, and it's very much a brain scramble.
But when you first decided to, try large format photography, presumably this setup wasn't the first thing that sprang into your mind. You just presumably thought, well, I'll buy a large format camera and stick some film in. Did you? Was that where you started from?
Not strictly speaking. I initially, I thought after sort of leaving photography for a little while, I thought I'd get back into it. So I went back to the textbook that I originally started with, which was Langford's Basic Photography. I don't know whether you guys know that book. And so in there, at the end of each chapter, there's a little list of exercises, so to speak, or experiments you can do. So I started out with a magnifying glass and a bit of card, just seeing how lenses work. And over the course of, several months, I then managed, designed and built this system. So it wasn't the original idea, but it seems to have evolved over the course of months, and it's taken a lot of testing and a lot of head scrambling to get to this point.
But now you're also starting to use starting to do wet plate work as well. Is that a different setup? You're using a different camera, presumably, for that work? Well,
I can take the 4x5 off these hybrid cameras that I built. Put a ground glass plate holder in the back.
Okay.
And then I stick that in front of my computer monitor and then use that to wet plate the digital images that I take in.
Right. So that's now we've come back to the Figalotype, haven't we?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. And again, that's taken a lot of experimentation to successfully manage to do that. So, because your computer monitor and wet plates don't have quite the same dynamic range, and obviously collodion is only collodion, which is the light-sensitive material that you use in wet plate, is only sensitive to certain parts of the spectrum. So it only really picks up towards the blue and ultraviolet.
Yeah.
And so I've done a lot of experimentation trying to adjust my curve in Lightroom to match the dynamic range of the collodion, so that I can then reproduce these portraits to get the same look.
Wow.
On the final plates.
Simon, I sensed you were trying to say something a minute ago.
That's past now. I'm just looking at one of these. I can't what we call them, Figalotypes. And it's the one you've posted most recently of Katie.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering. I mean, I can't see it, or at least I'm not sure if I can actually see it in the photograph that I'm looking at. But do you not pick up the resolution of the monitor in these?
That's what I thought.
Yeah, well, I know some people do have trouble with that, but I'm currently using a big. Well, it's a Thunderbolt display from my Mac, so it's about I guess about 24 inches across, something like that. And then my wet plate camera, I'm shooting on currently shooting on 4x5, so the image that on the screen is about, I would say, 12x12, and so that's now being reduced down to 4x5. So I don't have any trouble with pixelation, particularly reducing down to a smaller format. But the plan is, I've just got myself a Lund travel tank, which is 8x10, and then I'm planning on using a Toyo 8x10 to hopefully produce 8x10s from this. So I I've yet to create that kind of setup, but that's the ambition anyway. So if I do have a little bit of pixelation, I can just slightly pull the focus to blur the pixels out. But I think unless you're super close to the wet plate, I don't think you're going to see it. Yeah. But I can always, like I said, blur it out by very slightly defocusing it, or even using the soft focus on the knuckler. Yeah.
So, as far as I mean, it's an interesting way to go about using wet plate. Do you have you taken, or does it interest you in taking wet plate photographs in the traditional way?
Sure. Well, I'm hoping to do a shoot tomorrow, but so far I've only shot 4 or 5, kind of normally, if you so to speak. I live in a top floor apartment, so I don't have access to outside space because obviously you want to be outside, but there's a certain window of time in the morning where I could shoot indoors, but obviously I'm limited to do that by COVID at the moment. But yeah, hopefully I'm going to do a shot outside soon. But I know a lot of the best portraits that I've seen using wet plate do use flash, and because you can get that instantaneous, capture, and then really, capture all that perfect detail with that narrow depth of field, which is when I think wet plate looks at its best. But because of the low ISO of collodion, you need an awful lot of light and very fast lenses. So you're talking between 2,400 watt seconds to 4,800 watt seconds, which is more than I can afford at the moment. Yeah.
I think Dave Shrimpton, he has a series of just powerful lights. I don't think he pays a lot of money for them, but they're not. I don't think he uses much in the way of flash, does he? He's using
Wix building lights. Last, if I remember correctly, loads of them.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things is particularly because I like this this kind of Hollywood style with Fresnel lights. If I were to put my subjects under enough Fresnel lights, they'd probably burn to a crisp. So you're sort of limited by how much people's eyes can stand as well, if it's not instantaneous light. Yeah. So that's another advantage to the way that I'm being able to capture that kind of Hollywood look, but in wet plate. So yeah, my work's kind of about idolization and immortalization. So it's because a lot of these people on the circus and variety circuit are heroes to me, really, and so I want to make them look as glamorous and as sophisticated as possible, and then kind of immortalize them using the wet plate process.
Are they going through a hard time at the moment, a lot of these people?
I'm afraid so. It's my industry has been completely decimated, and there's very little prospect of things being picked up or work picking up until next summer, and that's assuming the vaccine and things go to plan. So pretty much all of my friends are out of work at the moment, and myself included, because I still work on the variety scene, and all of my gigs have been cancelled. I had a nice gig in Holland and coming up, and one to Czechoslovakia, and they've all just disappeared. So I've actually been very thankful that I've got this project to keep me going, because a lot of my friends they just haven't got anything at the moment. So it's a tragic time, I have to say.
I guess then listen to Jack Lowe's conversation with interest, because he's been working on this project for some years now, and it's also his income, it's his livelihood, and he referenced the book, didn't he, by Neil Gaiman's wife, called The Art of Asking, I think it was, and
yes,
and then he set up his Patreon site. Is that something that you'd consider doing, something like that?
I to be honest, I've also read that book, and I do have to say it's absolutely brilliant. And a real inspiration for me too. But going down the Patreon route is something. Yeah, I will definitely. After listening to Jack, it's something that I will definitely consider in future.
I think there's a lot of you shouldn't feel shy about it. There's a lot of people in this community. I mean, we talk about the community. I don't really know what that means, but there are from our narrow viewpoint of looking in our Facebook groups and sort of people that we interact with, and on Twitter as well. People are very keen to support artists and photographers. You know, someone puts a zine out and they ask for 5-10 quid for it. They generally sell them, you know, in the community, and so there's definitely a vibe out there for supporting others, you know, and you know, I support folks because I can, you know, and I think, you know, don't be shy. You know, you're doing something. I mean, goodness sake, you know, some of these. Let's hope it's not the case, but some of these people may not end up working again as circus performers, and you know, to do it with the ethos that you do, you know, you want to immortalize them and honor them. Really, it's a fantastic work, and it's very much coming at it from the same way as Jack's Lifeboat. You know, and he wants to immortalize and honor those men of the sea, men and women of the sea, you know, in a way that people did in the past, and you're doing exactly the same thing. And it seems to me that as you do more of it, so as you say, people will start to contact you, and you're getting the opportunity to do something really worthwhile, and it could end up being a you know, a sort of vanishing thing, really. I mean, I remember being really inspired some years ago. There was a photographer who was going around photographing traveling gypsy communities, and it took him, it wasn't his background, but it took him probably 2 or 3 years to get embedded into that culture and to be accepted, you know, and to realize that he wasn't there to be a voyeur. He was there to honor them and to portray them in a, you know, in a way which was, you know, truthful. And, you know, I'm not talking about people who might want to go and, you know, tarmac your driveway. I'm talking about travelers who had a long history of moving around with some very proud traditions. Yeah. And he was and I forget who that was, but I know he did a couple of books on them. Oh. And so there's a long tradition of this, and I think you'll find the community will be very supportive. So yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, that's definitely something
because it's very worthwhile.
Thank you. Yeah, you know, a lot of my friends, you know, they do live in vehicles and travel around, and yeah, they're often looked down upon by certain communities, and yet when they're on stage, they're applauded and cheered. It's a bizarre, you know, dichotomy that. But to be able to do that performance work, a lot of them have to live very frugally to be able to pursue their passion, and the amount of joy and you know, shared experiences that they bring to audiences is invaluable. You know, what's life without laughter and spectacle? It's you know, it's what really brings people together. If you know, a room full of people laughing and cheering, then you know, you can lose yourself in that. It's, you know, it's what life's about, as far as I'm concerned. And a lot of these people are extraordinary creatives. They do original and unique acts and creative work. And it's not only the moment you see them on stage, it's all the training they go through, the physical endurance of some of the things they do, particularly aerialists and acrobats, the making of the costumes, the editing of them, and more making of the music, and the support network and training spaces that have to be supported to enable these artists to be able to do their art, you know. So when you see someone on stage, you know, variety or circus next time, the amount of work that these people put in is phenomenal. And that, yeah, that's one of the reasons that I like to kind of try and elevate them through my work. Is because the amount of respect that I have knowing them from that grassroots sort of level.
Yeah. So, Guy, if I can just very quickly take you back to, again, that post where you shot of Katie and the Figalotype, and the Cook Knuckle. Well, we've addressed those two. Yeah. But I'm very just interested because I did read the conversation that went on between you and Mark Osterman on the who made a comment in the Facebook group, because you had said that you were first time trying Old Dead Bride collodion.
Yes.
So You said, I'm loving the subtle tones I'm getting with this recipe. It's a lot faster than the old workhorse, so that must be it. So are these sort of off-the-shelf collodion mixers that you can buy and coat onto your glass? Is that what they are?
Yeah, well, both of them are recipes, and so some people make and sell those pre-made, or the recipes are available online if you search them, and you can make them up yourself.
Right.
So old workhorse is particularly good because it lasts for a long time, and Old Dead Bride, which was invented by a guy called Brandon Fernandez, and I highly recommend you check out his work. He's a wet plate portrait artist. He invented that recipe, and I love it. It's really quick, and when I do come to be doing a kind of traditional wet plate, because of the speed of that collodion, that's the recipe that I will be using.
Right. Okay. Good.
Right.
That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's probably a good time to start winding things down. So Guy, we're not going to say goodbye just yet, but I just want to say it's been absolutely a pleasure chatting to you, and I've really enjoyed the tangents that we've gone on this week. So thank you for taking time out to have that chat with us.
Oh, it's been an absolute honour and a pleasure. Thank you.
Right. Okay. So let's say we'll start to wind things down, and the first thing I want to do is to say thank you to those people that have donated to us since our last show, and I'm going to read out. Most of them have left messages for us as well. So 3rd of July, I'm going back to, and this is from, oh dear, this looks like it might be a Finnish name, maybe, but Aram Havarniau. Yeah, so him. Thank you very, very much. I finally managed to find a notoriously difficult to locate donation page. Keep up the good work. Love the podcast. Thank you, Aram.
You see, Guy, even when you make it difficult, people still give you some money. So
yeah,
you'll be blessed.
They find a way. And then we've got Peter Black. And he writes, Andrew and Simon, I've listened to every episode and loved the show. I've learned so much and discovered so many photographers who continue to inspire me. After hearing the podcast with Jack, I thought I should help support the show. Thanks from Portland. Well, thank you, Peter. And it's the same for Andrew and I. Exactly the same. We learn things every week. And it's great to hear Andrew attempting to argue with people like Clyde from a few weeks ago, we get absolutely inspired by the people that join us, and today's guest is no different. So yeah, we love doing it, and thanks for finding us. Then the next one is from Silist, and he says, thanks for introducing me to Jack Lowe. It's good to know that there are people like this out there. So thank you very much. And yeah, it's the same thing again. We don't always know what we're going to get when we get somebody on, and it always takes us somewhere interesting. So Jeremy, I'm getting some tough ones this week. Jeremy Van Schwelwick. Jeremy Van yes, that one. And we all know who he is, so I don't need to do that one again. Thank you so much for the podcast. You keep bringing excellent content and a great variety of topics. Thank you, Jeremy. And also a donation from Christopher J. May. So thank you all for donating. And I was going to say, with a view to this, because things seem to have picked up a little bit. I don't know if that's something to do with having Jack on the show or not. But I think we're going to be at the point where we're going to be able to go out and buy a a proper recording device, which will be very, very handy with the upcoming outside broadcasts that we have planned coming up with. Quite a few people actually thinking about it. So we might even be able to make good content away from our computers. So thank you very much for your support there. And we've had a few emails, and really a couple of them are probably going to take too long to do in a conventional show. So
we're a bit frightened of one of them.
Exactly. Well, you haven't seen the other one yet, so you could be frightened of two of them. I think there's one email that we need to read out, which is quite succinct, and we can manage to understand this one. So do you want to do that email? And I say we'll do the other emails another time, and we might actually bring in a special guest to help us answer them.
I think so, yeah. So I have this email that you very kindly sent to me, and I have no idea why you sent this to me to read out, but it's from Graham Young, he of one half of the Homemade Camera podcast, and he's clearly just been listening to our episode with Clyde Butcher. So he says, being a Floridian, Clyde is one of my superheroes. And then in brackets, he must be quoting what Clyde said. I never wanted to be a good photographer. I wanted to be an artist. Great show. And then it says here, sent from my iPhone, which has probably corrected your name and other random words, creating humorous or possibly offensive typos. I swear it's not my fault. Well, thank you. Thank you.
Do my phones put those words in there in that?
Yeah,
way?
I think they must have taken flipping and changed it to.
Oh, okay. That would explain everything. Yeah.
And I don't swear normally. I'm just reading it out because obviously that's what Graham wrote.
Yes, so you wouldn't do such a thing.
I couldn't read it out and not swear because that's what he said.
Exactly. It's a fact. So what else could you do? Okay, so thanks for that one, Graham. Right, so Guy, again, it's been fantastic having you here with us today.
Well, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed it.
That's it. Now, do you have any shout-outs that you might want to say hello to, in the off chance that somebody actually might be listening?
Yeah, well, I'd like to say a huge thank you to my friend Tim Pierce, who introduced me to the wet plate process. And secondly, I'd like to thank all the people from the circus, variety and burlesque world that have come to my studio and let me stick them in front of my huge camera. Yeah,
that's cool. And so I've mentioned your Instagram account, and please feel free to mention that again. Are there any other places that people can find your work?
I'm in the process of creating a website for my work, but yeah, Instagram is the best place to go, which is just Guy Bellingham Photography.
Excellent. And also people can see your work in our Facebook group as well. You've been dropping stuff in there, and it'd be great if you could show us some pictures of some of your kit in the group. I'm sure people will be dying to see some of this stuff.
I'll stick the posing stand up there as well.
Excellent. Okay, so Andrew, have you got a shout out this week?
Well, only because you mentioned him just before, and he's a friend of two podcasts, Matt Lethbridge, LRPS, and Matt's been playing around with dry plates and did an interesting comparison shot with a waterfall, and I think it was FOMA 100, which is a favourite large format film of mine, and so that's great. Check out Matt's work because he's a great guy and does some nice work, and he's been using Jason Lane's plates.
Yeah, I was just going to say. I mean, just a bit of context. We were chatting before we started recording. I think it was anyway. Because there's a shot on there that Matt posted yesterday called, and today being Wednesday, by the way, and it's called Cauldron Falls with dry plate, and I absolutely adore this shot. I think it's absolutely beautiful. And going back to when we had Richard Pickup on the show last year, and I took some waterfall photographs, and the look that Matt achieved here was exactly the look that I was trying and failing to achieve back then. So lovely shot, perfect as far as I'm concerned. So double shout out for Matt there. Any others, or should we talk?
You're lucky I've got one.
Yeah,
I think
that's it. Okay. Well, that's more than I've got as well. So we're sharing that one. So outside of this podcast, how can people keep up with all the numerous things that you do?
Twitter's always a good place. I normally keep people updated with what I'm up to in various photography avenues. So I'm Warboys Snapper, Warboys being the village where I live. And where else? So I'm on Instagram as Warboys Snapper, or if you want just pinholes, Warboys Snapper _ pinholes, 2 different Instagram accounts. You can catch me most days in the Large Format Photography Podcast Facebook group, and at the moment every week on the Lensless Podcast, which also has a Facebook group called the Lensless Podcast Facebook group. So there we are. That's me.
Okay. Well, I'm on Twitter as well as Simon4. That's Simon with FOR at the end of it. I'm on Instagram as Simon Forster Photographic. That's also the name of my website if you stick .uk on there. And that's a place where you can find lots of lens caps, although not necessarily for large format lenses, although I am now making headway in making odd-sized caps, and this is going to be useful for people with large format lenses that you can't buy a normal lens cap for. So I'm starting to work on that. I've got an order in at the moment, which I think once I've actually done that order, I'll actually understand all the mechanics that are involved in this. But I'm making the main part of the cap is going to be 3D printed, but it will have like an outer liner of velvet, which will in theory grip onto the cap. But getting that pressure correct in a repeatable way is a tricky old thing. But that's something I'm working on. So watch this space on that one, because they will be available.
I found on my French lens, that lens I was using last week, that an Olympus OM1 push on. Yeah, oh no, it's not. It's from I think it must be from an Olympus Trip. Yes, it is. So it's the push on lens cap from the Olympus Trip, fits perfectly on there. And then I think, Guy, you said that a 77 pinch, one of those lens caps that you pinched, is that the right size for my Industar 37?
That's right, yeah. Yeah, that's what I use. It works perfect.
And I haven't got one there, so I've got a 67, that was, so I need to, but they're not very expensive, so I can get an inexpensive lens cap for that lens. Well, thank you for that.
Yeah, I mean, I use exactly the same kind of things. If you can buy a cheap cap that works and it pinches, then that's as good as anything. So, but there are just some things where you're just not going to be able to do that. So hopefully I can help fill that void.
I keep the large format, my 3 large format lenses. I do keep them capped because they all came with caps, and particularly the rear element. But I have them all wrapped up in those 10 burr lens wraps, which I find excellent. They're not that expensive. They come in several different sizes, and they're really good for protecting the lens.
Okay, so that's it. I hope you've enjoyed this week's show, and it'll be great if you can join us again next time. So goodbye.
Bye.
Goodbye.